So now we are going to start the next part of this mindfulness for young adult session. So basically that is teaching or some sermon based on concept and reality book. I hope someone is ready with the reading of the book. Probably someone, you can start from where we have stopped.
Screen. I hope Bante, you can share the screen now.
Correct, yes.
I'll start from where we stopped last week. The last reference in particular reminds us of the fact that craving, conceit, and waves, tanha, mana, ditthi, are also many instances of papancha. These are therefore definitions of extension, seeking to define papancha by giving its most notable instances. Thus, it seems that the commentarial tradition has rightly recognized the question of aspects referred to above. It has been suggested by E.R. Saratchandra that tanha is rather the result of papancha than papancha itself. However, as we have shown above, not only tanha but mana and ditthi also are illustrative of papancha, thus disallowing any distinction as to priority. Nevertheless, papancha can be regarded as something fundamental to tanha, mana and ditthi, something that both underlies and comprehends each of them.
So basically, as we last time discussed, from the title of this paragraph, from this chapter, actually from the commentarial tradition, tanha, mana, ditthi, the craving, conceit and the view are considered as the papancha. So that means they have very much like considered that is the papancha, but as Thero highlights, so it is they are actually examples of papancha. So papancha is a more broader term, and for them some vivid examples are tanha, mana, ditthi. So it is not necessary to restrict the whole terminology into these three terms, these three possibilities, but they are very good examples. By the way, we can recognize how within our minds, how craving leads to too much thinking, overthinking, how conceit leads to overthinking, and how various views leads to overthinking. So this is something that we need to recognize within our mind. So these are some easy references which we can practically use to recognize the operation of the prapancha in ourselves. Say, for example, you start loving someone, you had an affection, then you start thinking about in that line. So you are thinking this way, that way. So how you met him or her in the past, how you are going to meet him tomorrow, how you are going to do it, maybe some week after some time, how you are going to marry that person, how you are going to enjoy. So blah, blah, different ways that you can think. Now this is based on the tanha, the craving. So lust is part of it, affection is part of craving, and all desires are part of craving. So very much like that desire-based, love-based, or craving-based way of thinking. So overthinking, fantasizing, and all these comes under this category. How our mind tends to think when we have some desirous thing. Maybe it's a kind of a animate thing, or maybe it's an inanimate thing. Maybe we can, in simple terms, we can say it is a person, or we can say it is an inanimate something. Now, maybe you are thinking about your mother, you are thinking about your father, your children, and maybe even about your profession, your future goals. Now, all these are fairly based on the tanha, craving. So you can see that this is one very strong area how we are thinking. And it can lead to overthinking. So that is, overthinking is the area of the papancha. where we become victims to that overthinking, and ultimately we can't stop ourselves. Mind keep on thinking, and we can't stop. So that is the very much like we have become a slave to this papancha. And on the other hand, we have certain amount of comparison. I am better than you, or you are better than me. I have to compete with you, or I am equal to you. So I need equal rights. So like that, we start comparing ourselves. And that also leads to so much of thinking. And we always have that underlying tendency to compare. Every time I am a separate person, you are a different person. So we have this egocentric way of keeping ourselves, recognizing ourselves as an individual, as a separate person. And everything else we consider as not I, not myself. So immediately there is a comparison. There's a possibility of comparison because I is here and then the not I is there. So always there is a conflict between these two. I am here, my ego is here operating as a center. And on the other hand, there is outside, that is the outside world, you, all, everyone. And many things are there. So that outside world, and I am here. So now I am thinking, so that is in a way, very fundamental way of thinking. And we can see in the future chapters how Buddha actually explained that very fundamental thought, I am, is a product of papancha. And it is actually promoting this comparison. It happens because of the conceit. So we do a certain amount of comparison. It's a very intricate or very fundamental operation in the mind. So we tend to compare ourselves. That's another area which promotes thinking. And the other area, the third area is the views. So we have certain fixed views. I have my own ideas, or I have my own fixations, my accepted norms. So these are the very fundamental foundation on which I am operating. So these are the beliefs. These are my strongly adhered principles. Now they are also promotes thinking. So that's the thing. So my own adhered protocol, my own adhered principles, my own thoughts, views, now all can be conflict with someone else's views, someone else's adherences, someone else's norms. So then I am thinking my view, my idea, my thought, or my understanding, my religion is the best, not yours. So now the conflicts are also happening. And I am centered upon my own understanding, and I rigidly attach to that. I rigidly trying to protect that. And now fair amount of thinking can happen because underneath is that foundation of the thought, of the view. Now views are also a strong cause of having overthinking, having too much thinking. So that promotes maybe a kind of a direction is given. Okay, this is the truth. This is the way. So that is the understanding, my accepted norm. Now based on that norm, I am thinking. A kind of a direction is given. So I am thinking based upon that direction. So that is how our minds are conditioned. So the views are also another area. Therefore, we are tempted to overthink. That's how people become extremists. They think, overthink, and ultimately their belief becomes strongly adhered. And whoever comes against it, so we consider as enemies, and we got into confrontation. So that is how the whole conflicts are happening. And you can see in the whole world how conflicts are going on, how battles, wars are going on, based upon these views. So we have some strong views, our religious views, our adherences, our norms, our ethics, cultures, etc., on which we strongly adhere to, and that can lead to too much thinking. So the papancha are, in a way, a broader category. In that broader category, these three areas are fairly evident and fairly strongly available and happening every sector of the society, starting from the little child to the end of the, say, an old man. So the whole thinking process is going on in these three areas. Okay, someone we can continue.
Yeah, Bhante. The essence of the Buddha's discourse to the monks in the Madhyapindika Sutta may now be summed up. If one does not entertain craving, conceit and weaves, tanha manaditti, with regard to the conditional phenomena involved in the process of cognition, by resorting to the fiction of an ego, one is free from the yoke of proliferating concepts and has thereby eradicated the proclivities to all evil mental states which breed conflict both in the individual and in society. As a description of the goal of spiritual endeavor in Buddhism, this affords us an insight into what Buddhism stands for. It is noteworthy in this connection that the true raison d'etre of Madhyapindika Sutta is the question put to the Buddha by Dandapani the Sakyan. Kingwadi Samano Kimakkai. What is the doctrine of the recluse? What does he proclaim? The Buddha's reply runs thus: Yathavadiko auso sadevake loke samarake sabrahmake sasramana brahmaniya pajaya sadeva manusaya na kenchi loke vighaya tittati. Yatacha panakamehi visangyuttang viharantang tang brahmanang atangkating. Akatangkating. Chinnakku kuchang bhava bhave vita tanhang sanya nanusenti. Evang vadiko ahang auso eva makkai. According to whatever doctrine, O brother, there is no contending with anyone in this world, with its gods, maras and brahmas, with the progeny of the world comprising recluses and brahmins, gods and men, and also due to which perceptions no longer persist as latent proclivities in the mind of that brahmin, even as it lives detached from sense pleasures, without questionings, remorse cut off, and devoid of craving for reiterated existence. Such is my doctrine, O brother. Thus do I proclaim it.
So let me remind you what so Buddha referring here. So basically, if you can remember the course of Madhyapindika Sutta. So Buddha was taking a rest, and at that time, Dandapani, one of the Sakyans, so he also coming to the same area to have a walk, and he come across the Buddha sitting under a tree, and there he wants to have a little discussion with the Buddha. So he's asking, so what is your teaching? So now Buddha very concisely introduced the teaching to him. And this teaching, you can see, in a way, in one sense, is very deep. And on the other hand, it is providing certain aspect of peacefulness. And we can see as it is going on in the next sections. So basically, so that is the teaching that Buddha is introducing to Dandapani, but he didn't understand it. So he simply shook his head and he went away. And after that, Buddha returned to the monastery. And then he explained what happened to him while he was in the forest. Simply he meant that he reiterated what he has mentioned to Dandapani. Even the monks didn't understand his answer to Dandapani. And one monk actually wanted to get more explanation or more details. And then, as a result of that, Buddha gave a little bit of detail, but that is also didn't understand by the monks. And so that teaching is, on the other hand, one of the essence of this Madhyapindika Sutta, where the Buddha mentions that if one does not entertain craving, conceit and views, tanha, mana, ditti, with regard to the conditioned phenomena involved in the process of cognition, by resorting to the fiction of an ego, one is free from the yoke of proliferating concepts and has thereby eradicated the proclivities to all evil mental states which breed conflict both in the individual and the society. Now, this is the answer that Buddha has given to the monk, and that also couldn't understand by the monks. So they have gone to Venerable Mahakaccana to get a more detailed explanation. Actually, after giving this brief explanation, Buddha went away. So the monks actually now approach Venerable Mahakaccana to get a detailed explanation. Now that detailed explanation is what Venerable Mahakaccana is providing, how a sense object comes to the cognition, to a sense faculty, and how that promotes feeling, and how the recognition happens, and how a thought happens, how too many thoughts now happens, and ultimately how one goes through conceptual proliferation. And it now leads to all the different kinds of conflicts, all different kinds of atrocities, and maybe battles, wars, etc., etc. And again, it promotes basically the hidden tendencies, proclivities in oneself. So you can see that that whole explanation is given by the Venerable Mahakaccana. But Buddha's answer is very concise and very, very precise in a way. Now, the opposite, that means if we are able to minimize prapancha, if we are able to avoid prapancha, it is not that we completely avoid associating any kind of a sense object. It is not that we simply close our eyes. It is not that we are going a completely remote area so that we can't listen to anything. Rather, so here what Buddha promotes is, if one does not entertain craving, conceit and views with regard to the conditioned phenomena involved in the process of cognition. Now cognition is going on. Hearing is happening, seeing is happening, sensing is happening, cognition happens, but internally one is not entertaining any kind of craving, conceit and the views. That means papancha is subsided. Papancha is not promoted. Overthinking is not promoted. As much as possible, you know how to calm down the mind. As much as possible, you know how to silence the mind. Maintain the mind in a silent mode rather than allowing too much thinking. So that is a very important area in the Vipassana, how to overcome overthinking. So this is an area that we all have to pay enough attention, because nowadays people are too much thinking, leading towards fairly difficult mental disorders. It can lead to depression, it can lead to maybe anxiety. All different kinds of mental diseases are also possible because of this too much thinking. And it can lead to kind of a rumination. You are thinking on the same matter again and again. Some kind of bothering matter is there, so you are thinking about the same line again and again. It's repeating. Ultimately, it becomes kind of an habitual tendency in your mind. You are habituated to think like that. It is torturing the mind and torturing yourself. It may end up with conflicts, maybe family conflicts, maybe divorces. Many issues are there. But all have started with a kind of a thought. You started making unnecessary effort to think, spending fair amount of thinking. So these are areas actually we need to understand how we are in a way ruining our lives by allowing mind to too much involved in thinking. So therefore thinking is not always something beneficial. It can be harmful. But thinking as a skillful strategy, we can think properly. So that is some kind of a skill that we all human beings have, but we have to use that skill properly. So like a weapon. So if we are not properly using it, then we harm ourselves and we harm others. Maybe if we are using it properly, then we can ultimately even calm down the mind, relax the mind, and if necessary, we can think. So that is the whole theme in the Vitakka Santana Sutta. Actually, we will go through them in the future when we are talking about the non-proliferation. And there are various strategies that Buddha is telling us, showing us, so how to overcome thinking, avoid unnecessary mental proliferation. So anyway, we need to understand the gravity of this overthinking, the proliferation. And again, the value or the benefit of minimizing that. So when we see, when we hear, when we go through various sense cognition, it may promote overthinking, but we have to be careful to minimize that. We have to be careful to shorten that. And again, keep the mind relaxed, keep the mind quiet. That is something happens as we are continuing with our mindfulness practice, as we are continuing with our vipassana practice. So we start understanding how we are weaving thoughts in our mind, particularly when you are paying attention to the mind in Chittanupassana or in Dhammanupassana, you may understand how you are weaving thoughts and how certain images are propagating, how you are adding further images, how you are promoting thinking based upon a little image, a mental image. And again, now that's a very, And the last passage, what just we have discussed, is the very certain answer that Buddha has given to Dandapani. So it's a very concise teaching is included there. So what is the Buddha's teaching? Very concisely is included there. And Venerable Jnanananda actually now elaborates the salient features in that passage, and let's listen to someone to understand that information.
Two prominent features of Buddha's theory are revealed by this reply. Firstly, his theory is of such a kind that it does not entangle him in disputes and conflicts with anyone. Secondly, the biases and proclivities that normally underlie sense perceptions are extinct in him, freed as he is from bondage to sense desires, from doubt, remorse, and craving. These two features are unique for his theory, since their opposites are generally true of dogmatic theories in the world. The Buddha's brief discourse to the monks, which we have analyzed above, is merely a subsequent elucidation of his reply to Dandapani and Mahakaccana's formula of sense perception. The Lucas Classicus of our inquiry to Papancha is about a further commentary on that discourse. Hence, we see that the question of Papancha lies at the core of Buddha's reply to Dandapani. All this is suggestive of the immense significance of the term in the psychological, ethical, and philosophical spheres of the teachings of Buddhism. From the Madhupindika Sutta, let us now pass on to other suttas which throw more light on the subject of our inquiry.
Okay, I think, Saman, if you can roll back to the previous part. So basically, now the Venerable Jnanananda is highlighting the two salient features available in the Buddha's theory. Basically, the Buddha's teaching. So when Dandapani is asking, what is your theory or what is your doctrine? So Buddha is giving a very specific answer to that. According to whatever doctrine, O brother, there is no contending with anyone in this world, with its gods, Maras and Brahmas, with the progeny of the world comprising recluses and Brahmins, gods and men. And you can see that it's a non-conflicting, we can say, a religion. I don't know the religion, the term is appropriate, but anyway, so the Buddha's teaching is leading to a non-conflict. It can't promote conflicts among the people. So that's why we need to understand how Buddha is presenting his teaching. Nowadays, people, even the Buddhists are in conflict. They are also attacking to this and attacking to them, attacking to that, and there are enough religious wars are available in the whole world, and Buddhism as a religion is the most peaceful religion as far as we understood, but now even the Buddhists are coming to a kind of area where Buddhists are also getting to the conflicts. They are also in attack. But on the other hand, Buddha's teaching, he promotes non-conflict. So you can't get into arguments based on the Buddha's teaching. Then we can see that we are not really representing the Buddha's teaching. So his teaching has the main quality that it is not promoting any kind of a debate. It's not promoting any kind of a conflict, any kind of a competition. Rather, it subsides all that competition. It, in a way, unites the people. It promotes the humanity rather than divides the people. It talks about the suffering which is shared among all the human beings. It talks about the suffering which is shared among all the living beings. So we are sharing that common suffering. So Buddha starts Four Noble Truths with suffering that is common to everyone. It is not that only the third world countries are suffering and others are not suffering. Rather, everyone is going through a certain amount of unsatisfaction. So it's a kind of shared truth. So we are coming to a common ground. So we all want happiness and all are going through a certain amount of unsatisfaction, maybe fear, maybe internal conflict, maybe a little bit of anxiety. So different ways of unsatisfaction, stress, etc. are there. So kind of a common shared reality. So Buddha asks us to look at it. So he presents this common truth. Now we are all sharing the same thing. It doesn't have any kind of black-white difference, East-West difference, or Buddhist-Muslim difference. So everyone are sharing the same suffering. So likewise, Buddha's teaching helping us to see this commonality, see this common suffering that we all are going through, experiencing, in a way help us to ground ourselves and to help each other and to minimize conflicts. So we can see that very fundamental teaching there Buddha highlights is that his teaching is there is no contending with anyone in this world. There is no any kind of a conflict in this world if we are fully adhere to his teaching in that sense. So we can understand, are we really following his teaching or have I deviated from his teaching? Am I defining my own religion? Am I defining my own Buddhist sect? Or am I trying to be with the Buddha, representing the Buddha, where there is no conflict? So we can think about it. So we can see how concisely Buddha wants to pass the message to a person, emphasizing there is no conflict in his teaching. It doesn't promote any kind of conflicts among any sect. So you can see that. So here Maras, Brahmas, gods, and the different humans, categories of humans, recluses, Brahmins, that means, and the administrative people, and the common people, folk, everybody is there. Among any of them, there is no conflict. So that's the interesting part. And then the second part is more deeper on the other hand. So there Buddha mentioned, and perceptions no longer persist at latent proclivities in the mind of that Brahmin. So the Brahmin here represents the Arahant. Even as he lives detached from sense pleasures, without questionings, remorse cut off, and devoid of craving for reiterated existence. So these are further, say, interesting features of the Arahant. So when one becomes an Arahant, so these are very interesting features in his mind. So the first feature, we can say the perceptions are no longer persist as a latent proclivity in his mind. Now typically when we are going through sense cognition, when we see someone through our eyes, when we see something through our eyes, immediately we get attached to it, attached to someone, and certain amount of information is now start deposited into our mind. Now we can remember him. Now we can remember that sight. Assume that during the weekends that you have gone to see a beautiful cinema and you are enjoying that cinema, that particular film. So once you come back, now you are at home, but you can remember some thrills, some very thrilling scenes, some beautiful sceneries, or maybe some sexual activities. So depending on your interest, so certain amount of information is now residing in your mind. So they are fairly deposited in the mind. They remains in the mind. So you can remember all these incidents, all these paragraphs, all these maybe the discussions. Assume that you are listening to a particular discussion. Someone is talking, but you remember certain parts of that. And again, probably that particular part which was actually residing in your mind can cause too much thinking, overthinking. And maybe you are experiencing something else, maybe a certain amount of sense cognition, maybe through the nose, through the tongue, through the body, and maybe a certain amount of thoughts are coming to the mind due to some reason. And whatever you like, start deposited into your mind, maybe remembered into your mind, stored into your mind. And later, maybe after several days or after several weeks or after several months, probably you can remember what you have experienced. Maybe a little bit of distortion has also happened. And we believe that. So we consider it as our memory. It is quite important. It is necessary to remember everything. So we promote memory. But unfortunately, fair amount of mind has been occupied because of these memories. All these little parts that we have caught, caught from different incidents, now are residing, occupying in our mind. But the interesting point with the Arahant says that his mind seems not contaminated. Even though he go through all different kinds of sense experiences, since he doesn't have raga, dosa, moha, lust, hatred and delusion, it doesn't promote lust, hatred, delusion related remainings in his mind. So his mind does not get occupied with the various kinds of imprints, various kinds of segments, various kinds of signs, marks of that particular incident is now not getting registered in his mind. So mind remains in a way clear. His clarity of the mind is retained, unlike ours. And on the other hand, the next part highlights is that he lives detached from the sense pressures. Now that represents that his mind is completely free from lust, completely free from craving. So as a result of that, even though he is living as a human being, his mind is detached from the sense pressures. Basically, there is no sense desire operating in the mind. There is no thirst available in the mind. So his mind is not thirsty. His mind is not asking for this and that. His mind is not desiring for various sensual pressures. Rather, mind has quenched. Mind is at peace. There are no demands coming from the mind. And then next, without questionings, now he has no doubts. So basically, when we are practicing, so we have a lot of doubts. We have a lot of perplexities in our mind. So we are not sure about the path. And we are not sure whether our action is correct. Maybe we have certain doubts about maybe the morality. So I have doubts about my understanding. So likewise, we have certain amount of doubts with respect to our own practice, with respect to the teaching, etc., etc. But as we are continuing, we can see these have to be abandoned. So doubts has to be lessened. And ultimately, one has to come to a very clear area that there are no doubts at all. You are quite sure about what's going on. So all the doubts, all the perplexities, all the knots, all the tangles, entanglements are clarified. So the mind is now quite sure about what's going on. You have seen the reality, no more doubts. So the Arahant's state of mind, you can understand. So there are no more doubts, no any perplexities in the mind. And next, remorse cut off. Now, no regrets. Now, all these are, in a way, the regrets, doubts, restlessness, are, in a way, we can see certain very subtle ingredients on the worldings, subtle ingredients of our mind. So they are always coming up and down and triggering certain different kinds of defilements. And now here it is mentioned, the remorse is cut off. So that means Uddacha Kukkucha is not there. Regret and the restlessness is not there. It happens only when one becomes an Arahant. So the regrets, restlessness still available when as a noble person, but when one becomes an Arahant, in the Uddhambhagya Samyojana, the upper fetters are all cut off, so the restlessness is not there, regrets are also not there. And devoid of craving for reiterated existence. So that again indicates that the higher fetters. So even when one becomes an anagami, non-returner, still very subtle level of desire is operating for existence, maybe in a higher realm, maybe in a Brahma realm. So the Ruparaga, Aruparaga is still available in an anagami, a non-returner. But for the Arahants, nothing is there. He doesn't have even a desire to, exist in the future life. So he understood that there is no person here, there is no being here, except the causal happening of the 5 aggregates. So very thorough understanding is there in his mind. So as a result of that, there is no desire for reiterated existence. So you can see how deeply Buddha has included very interesting salient features of his teaching into the answer. It is obvious that we all can't understand it immediately. So that's why the monks couldn't understand. They want a second explanation from the Buddha. Buddha gave a second explanation that also couldn't understand. Then they went to the Venerable Mahakachana. So you can see the whole dramatic kind of a situation went on. So we can understand how, in a way, monks are very keen to understand all these meanings. So the Venerable Mahakachana is now slowly giving a more detailed explanation. And based on that, we are now trying to understand all these. Okay, I think we have discussed a certain amount of facts today also, and we have to start a completely different chapter next time. And with that, I like to conclude today's Dhamma sermon, this based upon this Concept and Reality book. Now I like to open the session for questions. And actually last time also there was a question related to Mulapariyaya Sutta, and probably at the end of the session I will like to share some information with that as well. So let me share the screen and go with that the answer to last time question. Somebody asked, so what's the difference between what's the proliferation, the impact of proliferation explained in the Mulapariyaya Sutta? The Mulapariyaya Sutta is actually the first sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, and there are, in a way, Buddha is coming up with 24 concepts. About these 24 concepts, actually these 24 concepts are the examples actually. He has taken from different areas, different examples, representing different areas. So for example, from the 4 elements, he has taken certain examples. And from the different kinds of beings, he has taken examples. And different kinds of higher jhanas, he has taken examples. And our sense experience, he has taken examples. And on the other hand, certain dogmatic understandings, our views, he has taken examples. So these are the 24 different kinds of examples he has taken. So I'm not going to explain everything here. But interesting point is, now with respect to all these different examples, so what is the way they are handled by different people? So Buddha is now taking 4 persons. One is an ordinary worldling, untaught ordinary person, asutava pudujjana. And the second one is who is in the higher training. He's a seeker. He's a noble person. That he's the second person. Third person is an arahant. The fourth person is a Samma Sambuddha. And the third and the fourth persons Arahant and the Samma Sambuddha, so their reaction or their way of looking at these four or rather 24 concepts are very similar. They are identical. So in that sense, we can consider that the whole three persons are included here. The typical worldling who has no idea about the teaching, and then the second person is the noble person, the third person is the Arahant. So the first person actually is in a kind of a complete typical recognition. Say for example, he has seen a chair. So typically he divided immediately. So I'm here, chair is there. So that typical recognition. So he recognized himself as a person, and in front of him there is a chair. So that is the object. Now he wants to recognize, oh, this is a beautiful chair. So I want to have it. So this is my chair. So likewise, he starts thinking about that chair. So after he has seen a particular object, he immediately starts thinking about it, and he go through the typical kind of recognition. So different names are given to different objects. So he knows this is a chair, this is not a table, this is not a cricket bat, this is a chair. So he knows that. So he then recognizes it, and maybe he is giving some value to it, and maybe he is now thinking about it. Now all different kinds of what we call as the language, phrases, etc. are there to explain that incident, how he is seeing, how he is interacting with this particular object. So what is the relationship with him and the object? Now all these things are available. Now all this promotes a kind of a manjana, conceiving in his mind. So I-centered thinking is now promoted, and he is now thinking. And ultimately Buddha mentioned he delights in earth, pataving abhinandati. So he wants to have, he like to see this particular object. So I have taken a simple object here as a chair. And so this is the typical mundane or worldling, how he is operating in this, in the whole world. And next comes the, what we call as the second person, the disciple in higher training. Now he, rather than immediately jump to thinking, he has certain amount of his own practice. Certain insights are now operating in his mind. So he has worked out in the Rupakhanda, the form aggregate. He has seen what is really available there. So what is the impact of the earth element, water element, fire element, air element. So he has gone through that fair amount of thorough understanding, some direct understanding. And so basically he has seen it. As a result of that, he was able to maintain a mind free from the, what we call as the form element. He has developed certain amount of mindfulness, certain amount of kayanupassana. So as a result of that, he can keep the mind away from the body. He can keep the mind free from the different sense objects. But unfortunately, it is not perfect yet. So what's the procedure here is highlighted, where pataving patavito abhinyaya pataving ma manyi. So basically, he has to further restrain himself. Mind still trying to promote thinking. Mind wants to think, but he is now applying brakes. He is reminding himself that there's a deeper teaching that I have seen. So this is not the reality. This is something man-made. This is a kind of a conventional object. So don't get attached to it. Don't get delighted about it. So don't overthink about it. Now he is in a way correcting himself. He's advising himself. He understands the proclivity available in the mind. He understands the tendency in the mind to overthink, to possess it, and to have it, to reach to it. The typical old routine, the typical old habit is sometimes coming up, but he is restraining himself. So that's beautifully mentioned. Pataviya mamanyi, patavito mamanyi, pataving meti mamanyi. So basically he is now advising himself, restraining himself. He should not conceive himself apart from earth, should not conceive earth to be mine. So etc. etc. So likewise, he tried to minimize conceive. He tried to minimize conceptual proliferation. Now he's going through the training. He's restraining his mind. He understands the tendency available in the mind for proliferation. So he's trying to minimize that. So he's restraining himself. He understands this weakness is still available in the mind, but he's restraining himself. So that is the noble person. Then the Arahant. The Arahant is completely free from prapancha. He does not conceive himself in earth. He does not conceive himself apart from earth. He does not conceive earth to be mine. He does not delight in earth. So you can see with respect to anything, he has no conceiving. He has no any sort of a mental proliferation. Because he has seen the things as they truly are. He has fully understood it. He directly knows earth as earth. Pataving patavito abhijanati. Having known directly earth as earth, he does not conceive himself as earth. So basically he has thorough understanding. He has fully understood. As a result of that, prapancha is completely cut off. No more proliferation going on in his mind. So these are the three interesting differences. We can see how prapancha is operating in a worldly person, to what extent prapancha is operating in a noble person, and how an arahant is completely free from conceptual proliferation. Okay, now I think you can start, Chamida.
Sorry, Bhante.
Yeah.
Very nice. I think something happened with the computer and I had to log out and come back in.
Okay.
Yeah. So before we start the questions, I would just like to advise everyone that we start the program at 7 p.m. Australia is daylight saving time now, so which is still 1:30 in Sri Lanka. So that's just an announcement we did last time. So from this week onwards, that's the start time. Bhante, we have 6 questions today.
Right.
Question number 1 of 6. Sorry, before that, I was actually going to present that question that we had from last
Right.
week. So now we can just look at the questions this week. Question number 1 of 6. This is on the Dhamma sermon question. Dear Bhante, is there a direct connection between some stages of prapancha and the bhava, or becoming independent origination with metta? That's the end of the question.
Independent origination. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So can you repeat the first part, Chamila, the question?
Yes. Is there a direct connection between some stages of prapancha and the bhava, or becoming independent origination? Yes.
So we can say a certain amount of relationship is there. You know that when we do thinking, and that thinking slowly develops a desire, and that desire leads to becoming. Now I want it. I strongly want it. I strongly want to possess it. Now I am thinking about it, and you become that. So that bhava is now has arisen. So the new state has arisen in the mind. So previously assume that your mind is very calm, relaxed, detached, no proliferation at all. You are in a peaceful state. But you start thinking about someone or something or some kind of an activity or something. And now that promotes certain amount of desire, certain amount of wanting in the mind. Now you start imagining about it. Now you start different kinds of mental formations. And it can lead to bhava, what we can call as the upadana, clinging. So you are fully attached to that. You are basically grasping that state. So as a result of that, now you are becoming that. Upadana paccaya bhava. Once you grasp, so you become that. So on the other hand, we can say, so the proliferation process is causing or promoting this becoming process. On the other hand, by thinking, you can become someone. By thinking, you can mentally act as someone. You can assume yourself as someone. Because thoughts are properly showing you a different path, and you are navigating in that path, and you become that. You become someone. So you have lost your identity in a way. That identity in the sense that you were no one, basically. So you didn't have any kind of an ego. You didn't have any kind of a self-view. But as you are continuing thinking, now you slowly promote ego. You promote self. Ultimately, you become someone, and that has a self. You are a person now. You are an individual now. So therefore we can say, yes, prapancha is causing the becoming. Prapancha is causing the existence, causing the dependent origination to continue, ultimately end up with the suffering.
Question number 2 of 6 is on the Dhammasamana again. Dear Bhante, what are the strategies to overcome prapancha? Last week, Venerable Bhante said we will discuss about it as part of the book, of this book later. But every moment we are creating so much prapancha, and a bit curious to know what strategies are there briefly, until it can be discussed in detail, so we can start the practice. Much merits for your guidance.
So basically you can practice mindfulness, so that itself is a very strong strategy to overcome prapancha. So basically immediately we can't confront various thought processes in the mind. So the best strategy is to pay attention to your bodily activities. Say while brushing your teeth, say you are paying attention to brushing teeth. Say while having your meals, okay, you are mindfully having your meals. While say washing dishes, okay, you do that mindfully. Say while sweeping, you are doing that mindfully. So likewise, as much as possible, trying to keep the mind in the present moment, maybe engage with the present activity. So that is one interesting strategy we have to overcome prapancha. Because more and more you are grounded in yourself. More and more we are within the self-awareness. That self-awareness is a must. Because if it is available, only we can talk about Chittanupassana to directly understand the reactions or the activities happening within the mind. So in order to have that, we need a fair amount of mindfulness and clear comprehension. So the beginning to the very say standpoint, what we call as the beginning of the whole practice is the Kayanupassana. So therefore, I would say start practicing mindfulness. So mindfulness helps you to overcome prapancha to fair extent, just to be with yourself and to even to understand how thoughts are merely thoughts, rather than getting trapped in them driven by thoughts. And you can simply see thoughts as merely thoughts. So all that are possible when you are practicing mindfulness. So to overcome conceptual proliferation, one strong strategy available is the development of the 4 foundations of mindfulness.
Question number 3 of 6. This is on mindful sitting. Dear Bhante, during sitting, I use the breath to establish mindfulness. And when it fades away, try to be aware of the thoughts and observe the mind. During day-to-day activities, time to time, I observe the mind as well. After your recent book reading sessions, I could add the understanding of thoughts and mental proliferations to the observation as well. I will be grateful if Bhante can explain this again as a technique, how we can use this knowledge in the day-to-day activity mindfulness practice. With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of understanding its gravity, how harmful allowing the mind to overthink. So we are very much like understanding the gravity in this whole process, how important it is to minimize conceptual proliferation. And again, how the thinking is happening. So we are trying to understand the building blocks. So that help us to, to unentangle the whole process, disentangle the whole process. So that is the purpose of this. And think as we are continuing our whole book, you may get thorough understanding.
Question number 4 of 6. This is also on mindful sitting. Dear Bhante, much merits for your guidance on this program. My question is regarding watching thoughts. In the sitting practice, once the breath fades away and the mind comes to stillness, thoughts appear as the prominent factor. So I begin to observe how the thoughts come and go. However, after some time of observing this, I begin to feel very tired. It seems that the process, although it's just in your head, I feel like I have run a mile, and the mind feels very tired. So how do you keep observing the thoughts without feeling this tiredness? Much merits for your reply with metta. That's the end of the question.
Maybe you can, time to time, come back to the body, because it seems like you are trying to suppress thoughts. You are spending fair amount of energy in this whole process. Because if we don't have enough mindfulness, then probably it takes some time for the thoughts to go away. So typically thoughts are very weak when the mindfulness is strong. But if the mindfulness is not that strong, then thoughts can propagate to some extent. It can overwhelm us to some extent. And after a deep struggle, we are winning, by the way. That's good, by the way. But still, it's a little tiresome because still our mindfulness is not strong enough. So one possibility is that you can develop further amount of Kayanupassana. Maybe you can spend some time in sitting meditation, keeping your attention at the breathing, or maybe rising and falling, understanding their true nature, how they are coming and going, how they are rising and passing away. And that help us to develop fair amount of understanding, fair amount of insights, how instantaneous, how inconstant are all these different phenomena. Maybe bodily phenomena, maybe feelings, maybe thoughts. So you are understanding their impermanent nature, impermanent characteristic. And you understand their corelessness. There is no essence there. There is no person there. There is no self there. So you are understanding in other sense, anicca dukkha anatta. Understanding the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and the non-self. So that becomes a fair insight for yourself, and help us to minimize thinking and keep the mind relaxed. And on the other hand, so the developed mindfulness and clear comprehension is fairly strong, so that the thoughts are becoming weaker and weaker, and they may not stay longer in your mind. They may not occupy the mind for longer time. Once you pay attention to them, they quickly fade away. It happens naturally. So it seems like if you become so tiresome in Chittanupassana, that indicates still the necessary amount of mindfulness, necessary amount of clear comprehension is not still available. So therefore, I invite you to spend some time in mindful walking, mindful sitting, and maintaining certain amount of Kayanupassana practice, so that further your mindfulness and clear comprehension is improved.
Question number 5 of 7. This is a Dhammasaman question. Dear Bhante, can you please help us to link the concept of prapancha with 4 noble truths and the 8-fold noble path? Much merits for your service for explaining deep Dhamma in a simple manner. With metta. That's the end of the question.
So basically, we'll see. So I like to, rather than simply giving a, casual answer, I like to connect this with some suttas and give you some comprehensive answer. Let me give some time. And maybe Venerable Jnanananda also has discussed this in the book, how what you call this 4 noble truths are connected with the papancha. And of course, how already to some extent we discuss how the aggregates are connected to the papancha. Actually, you know that the first noble truth itself is the 5 clinging aggregates. So first noble truth is not apart from the aggregates. So the aggregates are the first noble truth. So the deeper we understand about the first noble truth, deeper we understand the aggregates. And in order to do that, we have to understand or practice what we call as the Satipatthana, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where the mindfulness practice on the body help us to understand the form aggregate. Mindfulness of the feelings help us to understand the feeling aggregate. mindfulness based on the Chittanupasana and Dhammanupasana help us to understand all 5 aggregates. So basically like that, so we are trying to understand what we call the first noble truth. But the interesting point is, as we are deeply understanding all this, so the tanha, the craving, the second noble truth start fading away. Dukkha samudayam pahatabba. So we start having a loosened grip on the craving. So craving is now become weaker and weaker. So as much as possible, probably now we are in a peaceful state of mind. So the tanha has sometimes abandoned, so the mind rests. Mind is free from tanha. Tanha has ceased. So we are resting in the cessation, time to time. Now we are resting or recognizing the third noble truth. And this whole path is the fourth noble truth, the magga, or the path, the noble eightfold path. So basically, when we are practicing 4 foundations of mindfulness, actually we are understanding the 4 noble truths. So all these noble truths are fairly interconnected. The first noble truth indicates that we have to deeply understand that Dukkhang Ariya Satchang Parinyayam. The second noble truth invites us to abandon that Dukkha Samudayang Ariya Satchang Pahatabbang. And the third noble truth expects us to realize that Dukkha Nirodhang Ariya Satchang Satchikatabbang. And the fourth noble truth expects us to develop that. Dukkha Nirodhagamini Patipadang Ariya Satchang Bhavetabba. So you need to develop that. So all that is included actually in the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So slowly as we are continuing that, actually the craving, even today as we discussed, craving is one area promotes proliferation, promotes suffering. So when we are minimizing craving, so that means we are reducing suffering. That means we are reducing conceptual proliferation. So they are fairly interconnected. So craving promotes thinking, craving promotes prapancha. So when we are practicing the craving reduce, that means reducing prapancha, reducing overthinking. So mind remains calm, mind remains silent. No need to think. So mind enjoys the silence, inner silence. So noble truths are fairly interconnected, included in the Satipatthana practice.
Bhante, we have 3 more questions, but we've gone over time already.
Yeah, fine. It's okay because next week I won't be able to conduct the session. Therefore, we can spend some more time.
Okay. So this is question number 6 of 8. This is the Dhamma sermon question. Dear Venerable Sir, can you please explain how to overcome overthinking via Vipassana meditation? With metta, that's the question.
Yeah, that's what I mean. As I already mentioned, mindfulness practice is one area, so that you are in a way deviating your attention back to the body without, at the moment, if you don't have confidence to immediately confront thoughts, so you are deviating your attention or paying your attention back to the body. That is one area, one strategy we have. Actually, you can refer Vitakka Santhana Sutta, where Buddha comes up with 5 methods to overcome overthinking. So probably as a separate section, I'll take it. Actually, definitely Venerable Jnananda has taken it in the coming, the sections. So you have to be little patient. So, so let's discuss that interesting question. So various interesting areas are available in this book. So very, very rich book, comprising many areas of Vipassana practice. So please be patient. So we are going to discuss all these methods available in the coming sections.
Question number 7 of 8. This is a general question. Bhante, you mentioned to a question today that when you are eating, be aware that you are eating. How do we do that, Bhante? With metta. That's the end of the question.
So you mindfully eat. That's it. So don't think about it. Just do it. So basically sometimes we are trying to plan, how am I going to mindfully eat? So you are thinking about that also. Now you are going to plan mindfully eat. So then it's going to be, you are not going to be successful. So rather while eating, say you take different dishes. Assume that now you are mixing the food. So what are you feeling while mixing the food? So what is the texture of the rice? So what is the texture of the different curries? And what are the differences? Say, is when you are touching rice, when you are touching a particular curry, is the sensation is the same? Or is there any difference? So it's very much like, yeah, in the present moment, as much as possible, these are very, very, fundamental things. So you can feel that. So while you are sitting, currently assume that we all are sitting. So how are you feeling right now while you are sitting? So as we just did the practice, so we know, okay, my head is straight, neck is straight, body is straight, my buttocks are touching maybe the chair. So you can see that sitting posture. So we are coming to the body. So similarly, while eating also, so when you are mixing food, what do you feel to your fingertips? Is there any kind of, sticky feeling? Is there any kind of wet feeling? Or is there any kind of a dry feeling? Or maybe you can feel the odor of the food. And maybe what we call the salivation happens. And now you are taking a certain amount of lump of rice to your mouth. Now you are opening the mouth. Now you are tasting it. So rather than immediately swallowing it, maybe you are tasting. Different tastes are there. Now assume that you are swallowing it. Likewise, so each and every little activities involved in this eating process, you can mindfully go through. Actually, you can watch. There's a beautiful video prepared by Satipasala. You can go through that video also. Probably Chamila can share that if you can find that's available in the Satipasala website, Mindful Eating. So there it is very beautifully explained. Very little activities are there while we are going through this eating. So how about knowing that those little parts available in this eating? So that is where we are trying to understand mindful eating.
We have one more question. The question number 8 of 8. Can we, or how does one, help a baby to grow up with the least amount of developing a sense of me, I, and mine? That's the end of the question.
I don't think that we have to purposely try to avoid that, by the way, because now we are immediately trying to apply some deeper Buddhist teaching into a little kid. I don't think it is necessary, because to some extent having personality view may be useful sometimes. Tanhang Nissaya Tanha Pahatabbu. Manang Nissaya Manang Pahatabbu. So that's another strategy Buddha, or rather Venerable Ananda is pointing out. So when you have a certain amount of personality, so you want to achieve something. So it's promoting that. In a way, you have a goal, you have an ambition. You are desire driven. But if that desire is a noble desire, say you want to become a stream winner, you want to become an arahant, so you want to have certain amount of understanding of the Dhamma. So you want to have, say, insights in the insight practice. So these are in a way desires, but desires are now aimed, directed towards a noble goal. So therefore, we can't say that when it comes to morality, certain amount of ego is there. So I am the one going to be a virtuous person. I was a bad person, now I want to become a virtuous person. Accepted. I am the one who is going to develop certain amount of samadhi, concentration. Okay, I am is there. So I am developing samadhi. Fine. Then you are developing samadhi. But later, when you comes to Panya Sikha, the third level, Vipassana practice, there you understand deeply how these phenomena are absence of any kind of an essence. It doesn't have any inner core. There is no self in it. So you can't actually teach all this to a child, then it's too much. So therefore, I feel that let him have the childhood. Let him enjoy the childhood. By the way, you can give him a little bit of some good qualities, like developing certain amount of mindfulness. Say, try to be in the present moment. Don't go ahead with too much thinking. And these are certain other areas that you can inculcate in his mind. Maybe later, as he is growing up, slowly, he may be able to understand the teachings and the insights. Probably, I feel that would be much helpful, because otherwise, immediately, if we are trying to inculcate non-self, like some deeper teachings into his mind, I feel it is too much for him.
That's all the written questions we have. So we've gone over time as well. So I think we will end the program now.
Right.
To end the program, I would first like to pass our merits and thank Bhante for his valuable time, even with the busy schedule at the monastery. To all the supporters of this program, both seen and unseen, and to the participants for joining today to practice and share their questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thero Saranai.
Yeah. Thero Saranai.
Thero Saranai.